Right, that's better. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Let me first probably introduce myself, and before we start, and I hate starting any meeting with an apology, but unfortunately I have to today. We were supposed to have started at 5 o'clock, but we have not started, and we started, we almost 50 minutes late, actually, not even 40, we're almost 50 minutes late. That's a very bad showing. Please accept our apologies. And we advised that we had to wait for other stakeholders that are still coming in. And I must apologize to those who are who are joining us virtually, and they might have been waiting since 5 o'clock, and we in no way are not taking this seriously. Our apologies. That said, I want to call on the CEO to quickly introduce the board members of MICT SETA, and over to you, CEO.
Good evening, colleagues. Good evening, stakeholders. Good evening, board members. Good evening to our learners as well that are here with us and also virtually. I would like to firstly welcome our board, and as a new board, I would like to take you through their introductions. I would like to ask the board members to please stand as I introduced each and every one of them. Mr. Simpiwe Tobela has introduced himself. Our chairperson, he's a ministerial appointee. Thank you. Sipho George Zwane from Organized Labor. Viwe Thomas James from Organized Labor. Lesiba Jan Langa from Organized Labor. Kaya Solomon Tsaba, Ministerial Appointee. Ntombigayise Khumalo, Organized Labor. Tabisa Zimbini Faye, Organized Employer. Tebogo Mek Mamrobela, Organized Labor. Merlin Khatebe, Organized Employer. Mawesi Ramunyai, Organized Employer. Tabo Mufukeng, Organized Employer. Loiso Ticha, Organized Employer. Posha Mngomezulu, Ministerial Appointee, Community Organization. Thanks very much. The next agenda item would be to look into the Auditor General's report. As a SETA, we did get an unqualified audit opinion for the financial year 2019-2020. As a SETA, we were able to achieve clean audits for the past 6 years towards financial excellence. And we can proudly say for 10 years, we have received unqualified audit opinion. We strive, obviously, to have a clean audit come the new financial year. In terms of CEO's overview, as an organization, I think we have improved a lot on financial governance, corporate governance. We're able to reduce some of the findings from the Auditor General, particularly those that were repeating. The implementation of many of the internal controls has happened because we have tried to make sure that we put more warm bodies into the organizational structure, and that has improved a lot. To some degree, we obviously have technology to improving our systems of internal control. So that continues to be a process that we strongly putting our eyes on. As a SETA, obviously, it's very critical that we push the accreditations of our training providers, and that has gone with the collaboration by industry to make sure that we can launch some of the 4R qualifications, and we are in a process with QCTO to make sure that those industry-led qualifications are introduced in the early part of next year. Obviously, notably, as a SETA, we were fortunate enough to be granted funding by the UIF to be able to train learners across the country on labor activation, and that program is going very well. There are some other programs where we have partnerships with Chinese Center, for instance. There are other partnerships we're trying to establish in Europe and also in Asia to make sure that we can expose our learners to other technologies. As a SETA, I think we've done very well in terms of looking at mandatory grants and discretionary grants. There was a slight increase because of high levy income in terms of discretionary grants of about 4.9%. In terms of discretionary grants, increase of about 33% because of the overcommitment we carried from the previous period. And also admin expenditure just leaping up by 3.7%. In terms of performance information and how we've performed as an organization, we have got 4 programs. Program 1 is administration against the first objective of providing integrated business solutions. There were 4 key performance indicators and all were achieved. The second objective of producing a credible and triangulated sector skills plan within approved scarce and critical skills. 5 KPIs all were achieved. In terms of the second program of sector skills planning, strategic objective number 3, producing and distributing a comprehensive career guide. 2 objectives, and they were all 2 KPIs, and they were all achieved. The other most important one, obviously, is around increasing the number of learners through accredited training and workplace for experience. There were some challenges there. There were 24 KPIs. We managed to achieve 17. Some of the challenges that we had to re-engineer around was the unemployed for bursaries, unemployed for internships, unemployed for learnerships, and also TVET placements. As you know, the economy is not at its best, and it's very difficult to be able to find jobs for our learners at times. And we always have to be very creative in terms of how we find new value, and that's why we really look forward to the discretionary grant applications, especially those that are very innovative, those that want to create new value, because we can't keep on hammering the same economy to try and produce more jobs, and when it's reached its limit. This morning, I had the privilege of meeting Tate Job Mahoro, and Premier of Northwest, and he committed to making sure that there is centers of excellence that are open in partnership with MICT SETA to try and create new value and new avenues and new platforms for kids to be able to accelerate their careers. So things like that will help us in these particular KPIs where we find it a bit difficult for these KPIs to be achieved. But nonetheless, I think it was a good score. On program 3, which is learning programs, providing capacity building sessions, 1 KPI it was achieved. The second objective was increasing support for SMMEs, unions, and NGOs. 1 KPI it was achieved. The last program, which talks about our accreditation and quality assurance, there were 4 KPIs there. 1 was achieved and 1 was overachieved. It was around developing and reviewing our existing qualifications to make sure that they still remain relevant. I must just congratulate the industry for collaborating with the SETA and obviously the other organs of state in making sure that we align ourselves and we take all our differentiated types of learning and we collaborate to do something for the country. You know, it's very key that a network engineer that comes from Cisco, a network engineer that comes from Huawei, they both speak the same language when it comes to fundamentals. That's very, very important because one day one of them will be hired as an IT manager and one of them might not know something that is very crucial in running that particular business. Yes, I agree there will be electives whereby if you want to specialize on Huawei, if you want to specialize on Cisco, so you go for it. But I just want to congratulate the industry. I know it has been a big task, a lot of meetings, a lot of debates, a lot of collaborations, and the team and my management team has done a stellar work on that front. Chairperson, that will be the end of the performance information. Over to you for the next item.
Thanks, CEO. On the next session that's coming, I just want to reflect on a few things that some of which will be on your pack that you've been given. The annual report has got some of the things that I'll be talking about now. Let me just quickly first just correct a minor thing. Mr. Klaba, you were introduced as a ministerial appointee. You have to wait for a few years more before you're a ministerial appointee. You are a representative of Labour. Am I correct? I don't want Mr. Klaba to go back home and when he goes to his constituents, they say, you sold us out. That's what happens in the Labour. I used to lead Labour in my previous years. Probably you were still young at the time, if you were born at all. So, but that's a discussion for another day. All right. With that out of the way, I'd like to just touch in a few things that are in the report. The first thing is that the COVID-19 pandemic that has hit the country and the entire world has had an impact on the SETA, MICT SETA in particular, in its operations, in the budget, in the targets that we had set ourselves. And this is complicated by the economic challenges that the entire country has had to go through because of the pandemic. You will be aware that the National Treasury has quite a few times revised downwards the projections of the economic growth because of what has happened since the lockdown that was announced by the president towards the end of March. I think that's one of the key things that whatever else we do, we should have that in the back of our mind. It calls on us to think differently and say, what is it that's different that we have to make? The situation is not what it was before March, February, let's say, this year. And probably it will never be the same again for MICT SETA and the industry as a whole. This has forced us to focus more on the 4IR and get to understand exactly what is this 4IR all about. It's a stop to be a pie in the sky now. It's a reality that we have to talk about and say, how does this relate to us? And what it is that we have to do to respond to the situation that we're faced with. But as we speak about the 4IR, as a SETA, we're pretty concerned about bridging the gap between the rich and the poor. Because if we continue to address these problems that we're faced with, but still continue to leave a large section of our country that is black and probably poor, it's not going to work for anybody. It's going to breed instability in the country. It is in the interest of the entire industry, the entire economy, to ensure that when we talk this 4IR, it's something that an ordinary person must relate to. It's not just about the rich and poor only. We are a country that has got urban and rural. We have, as a board, spoken firmly about reaching out to the rural communities without necessarily saying we abandon our responsibilities in the urban space. But then those rural people are also South Africans that deserve attention. And that's one of the areas that we need to be looking into. This is why the SETA has decided to an extent that's possible and with resources permitting, we would like to establish functional regional offices, regions which we will discuss how we configure that. But we are of the view that the SETAs must continue to sit in the nerve center of the economy, which is here in Gauteng. But they are not SETAs of Gauteng. They are not SETAs of Johannesburg. Many of you here come from rural areas. And these SETAs must find expression on the work that they do in those rural areas. There is an issue about urbanization, and part of that urbanization that's happening, and it's not the only thing, it's people chasing opportunities because opportunities are not there where they are. And MICT is a transversal SETA that must cooperate with the industry and other SETAs and other role players to say, how do we resolve problems that we find in these spaces, in these provinces, in these rural areas? This we will do when we create strategic relationships, and some of those strategic relationships that we're talking about, one the CEO has mentioned, we're in partnership with the UIF. Our view as the board is that it shouldn't be a once-off issue that you get this allocation from the UIF now, and then in the next year, things plummet. We must ask ourselves whether we shouldn't build a long-term relationship with institutions like the UIF. This is in the same way that I know we are in discussions with the National Skills Fund because we want to attract as much revenue for the industry and for the skills that we have to develop. And I'll come back later to the skills that we need to be developing as I listen to the board speaking about the skills that we need to be developing. We also are focusing on the monitoring and evaluation, because it's one thing to have this budget and allocated to these programs, but then the point that we're making is that we shouldn't be chasing numbers in the main. Numbers are important. But the question is that what is the impact that these numbers that we're pushing out? Because we will be complying and probably guilty of malicious compliance if we chase numbers only. But we need to ask a question, are the skills that we providing in demand in the economy? I know the CEO says there's somewhere where they are still using, what's this? Is it DOS or something like that? Windows 98. In some areas, somebody is providing training on Windows 98 now. But is that what this economy is demanding now? Are we focusing on the skill? This is a question not for the MICT SETA only, but it's for the industry as a whole. Are we geared up to respond to the economy and the skills that are required to prop up the economy from where it is? That's a challenge that probably is going to be facing the entire industry. We are also in partnership with TVET colleges that are different across the country. There are other problems that the TVET college system has that still need to be resolved. At the moment, where I'm from, it's a rural area whose economy probably would be largely agricultural, probably tourism as well. But then you get the TVET college flooded by learners who are doing office management. Which office are they going to be managing? In an area that's rural, that's agricultural, and probably on tourism. But the TVET college that's there does not offer anything that's got to do with agriculture and tourism. So our partnership has to revolutionize the TVET college system. And as we look into that, I think we just don't want to do this alone. Probably CEO we may have to create platforms where we are taking suggestions and views from the industry on how do we respond to those things. We are in partnership with universities. There are research chairs that have been supported by MICT SETA to look into specific things. I'll come back to it a bit later. We're also pursuing a relationship with the BBBE Council and Competition Commission as well. We intend having discussions with them. And I've mentioned the National Skills Fund. We also want to strengthen the relationships that we have with the industry. It could be individual players, but most importantly, the organized players in the industry. It's going to be important to build the relationship, and we know that we are all in this together. The challenges that we have identified that we're facing, maybe let me start by indicating that we did not have must we call it a permanent CEO? We did not have a permanent CEO for quite a while. Since the departure of the CEO back then. And probably we will not want to go into that, probably it's not for this platform. But I'm pleased to announce that we now have a CEO that is appointed for the next 4.5 years now, eh? No, 4 years, 2 months. It should have been 5, but then it's going to be 4 years, 2 months. So Mr. Zakwe is appointed now. Probably you'll be the first platform where we announce this, that he's been appointed as a CEO now on a full-time basis, getting into contract with us. But that contract, Mr. Zakwe is aware that it's not just about contracting him and securing his job. These board members are preoccupied with performance. We have 5 years to be here, and in that 5 years, we must have something to show at the end that we have contributed in changing the situation and contributed in the growth of the economy and in pushing out skills that are required by the economy. That's where our relationship with Mr. Zakwe is going to be. And fortunately, he's had about 10 months now to learn who are we and what it is that we are about. So that's where we'll be focusing. But we still continue to have a high vacancy rate in the organization, which is crippling the performance of the organization to some extent. There are a number of areas where they're still acting senior managers, and that is already in the process of being addressed. ATQA, senior manager, is in the process. Soon we'll be looking at the monitoring and evaluation senior manager. 4IR senior manager is going to be looked into very soon. These are all in the pipeline. We should be concluding these in the near future so that we then have no excuse for not doing what we are supposed to be doing as an organization. But the other challenge that we sit with is a case that probably I will ask when you need your time to ask questions. Please don't ask this. It's got a very nice word. Those who are my learned friends know it's sub judice, right? So my learned friends advise me, so we'll not be discussing this. But there's a case with BUSA, which is between DHEAD and BUSA, Business Unit in South Africa. And I think there's a discussion that's happening there. And we're confident that the minister and BUSA are talking about that. But if things go pear-shaped, it might have a very negative impact on the SETAs, not just MICT only, the entire SETA industry. So we hope for the best, and we hope the minister and BUSA will indeed be considerate on how they resolve that matter. Also, the impact of the 4 months levy holiday that was announced by the president has had an impact. It has seen us taking a knock of almost 25%. I think the CFO will get into numbers. I'm one of those who can't read long numbers. So I will not venture into that space and start trying to read numbers that are more than 6. I will be a joke, and I do not want to be trending for wrong reasons that I cannot call numbers. So the CFO will deal with that part. But I think it has had a huge impact, because it has meant that we have to curtail our targets that we had set, because they needed to be resourced, and there are targets that we would not meet with the current budget that we are having. This has got an impact to the stakeholders that we have, because the pie has shrunk to lesser than what we would have loved it to be. I think the other area that I think is a challenge, I've touched on it and I'm not spending much time on it, is the skills that we produce. And whether the learners that we are training, we're training them for the streets, or we're giving them a skill to make a living and contribute in the economy. Whether we place them in jobs, or they are able to create their own businesses. Because half the time, I think as a country, this is my point of view, and board members, you didn't tell me this. This is my view. Half the time, we focus on people getting jobs, but we speak little about people creating jobs. And I think the point is that these trainings that we are talking about, particularly in the sector of ICT, we should ask ourselves, are we training people that are capable of opening new businesses that have not been opened, that they can start new things that have not been known? Are we encouraging innovation? The year ahead, the focus is going to be on the 4IR. And we're working on that, and I think the qualifications of developing qualifications of 4IR is underway, and I think it is expected to be completed by February next year, I think. Yeah, should be round about there. We should be completing that. And I think we're going to be focusing more on the research. As I have indicated, we've got the research chairs that are supported on the areas of artificial intelligence, big data, the drones, and other related matters. But the other focus that is very important is that this board would be guilty if we did not pay much attention to small, black, probably phrase it differently, those who are previously disadvantaged in the SMME sector. They need special attention. We're not saying babysitting them, but I think we would be falling short of the work that we have to do if we're not very direct and purposeful in ensuring that we support that sector, of that subsector of the sector of ICT. But this we would do in partnership with the big businesses. We do not want to do this alone, but it must be a wide-ranging partnership that we're focusing on. The other thing that we are looking at is to create a uniformity across SETAs so that we can leverage on a larger pool of resources that we could share. Because at the moment, each SETA is functioning on its own and does not have a view of what's happening on another SETA. For a SETA like us, that is a transversal SETA, it's important that we build partnerships with other SETAs. It's also important that we focus on good governance. We do not want to be seen on Zondo Commission anytime soon. We can't afford that. That's why we strengthen the internal controls, and that's why we want to push and ensure that we maintain the unqualified audit opinion and probably sustain a clean audit going forward. I think we are on the same mind as the board insofar as that is concerned. I think with those issues, it's a very important thing that we're looking at going forward. We also just want to thank the board that was here until the 31st of March this year, that laid foundation for us to pick up from where they left off. And we also want to express my confidence in the board that I work with, that you've got a board that has got its mind and effort at the right place, and they're focusing on what it is that is supposed to be done for the country. I also want to confirm that we will complete the appointments that are outstanding, that I've mentioned, that are in the process of being completed. We want also to improve communication with our stakeholders. We should have had communication with stakeholders via stakeholder roadshows, which could not be possible because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But we want to find ways of improving the interactions with our stakeholders. We have emphasized to management, we want to be a responsive, agile, and customer-centric organization. That I already know there are some members who are here who have reached out on me without even knowing me, raising issues that they want to talk about, that they were not happy about. But we do not want it to escalate to that. You can't have a chair of the board that responds to those things that should have been responded to and resolved at an administrative level. So we want to reduce that sort of thing, but we are not saying we as board members, we should not respond when a need arises, that there are complaints that are coming up. That said, this is going to be a journey. We might not be able to resolve everything now, but then this is a journey that we're setting ourselves. We also want to ensure that we reach out to the entire country within the limited resources that we have. And we've got big dreams, but then these dreams may not always materialize because resources are not adequate. We also want to tighten the internal controls and root out corruption and any malfeasance in the SETA space. We want to change the image of the SETA, not to be known as a piggy bag. Do they call it that? Yeah, where people just take as and when they want. That probably image has to change. And the way it changes is not about what we say only, but it's also about what we do. And we are committed to doing that. We will ensure the good governance that must prevail so that we continue to be an example of how good governance is, and it's going to be a journey, but we are committed to undertake that journey. With that, colleagues, these are matters, some of which you will pick up reflected on the annual report. Included would be the performance report that the CEO has put, and I would then invite the CFO to talk about the financial matters, annual financial statements for the year 2019-2020. CFO?
Good evening. I believe that our executive authority is also joining us on the virtual platform. Good evening to them. Good evening to our accounting authority and members, led by Mr. Tobela, our chairperson, management team and staff, our stakeholders, and everybody joining us on the virtual platform. Good evening. As the chairperson has indicated, I'm the CFO for the SETA. My name is Tiny Mukabuki, for those who don't know me. I will be presenting to you the annual financial statements for 2019-2020, financial year that started on the 1st of April 2019 and ended on the 31st of March 2020. At the end of 2020 financial year, our asset base was 483 million. It was mainly made up of cash and cash equivalents, as well as the UIF receivables of 38 million. When we look at our cash and cash equivalents at the end of the financial year, it decreased by 10.3%. And this was mainly due to the discretionary grants claims that we had to pay over during the financial year. Our property, plant, and equipment decreased by 27%, and this is due to normal depreciation. Even though we had additions in our asset base, it was mainly due to the normal depreciation. Our intangible assets have increased due to the learner management system that was in development and that we are currently implementing, called the Skills Web. We've got a balance on the balance sheet of the UIF receivables of 38 million, and this is due to the service level agreement that the SETA has entered into with the UIF on the 29th of March 2019 to fund the learnership programs of 3,249 learners. The total contracted amount of the learnership programs is 191 million, and UIF will be contributing 80% of that amount, and the SETA will be contributing 20% of that amount. So the amount that you see on the balance sheet of 38 million comes from the first tranche payment that was receivable by the SETA from the UIF. When we look at the accounts receivable from exchange transactions, it has increased by 179%. And this is mainly due to the prepayments due to the new office accommodation lease at the head office. So we were undergoing a few renovations on the new lease, as well as the deposits that we paid towards the office accommodation. Accounts receivables from non-exchange transactions decreased by 45%, and this is mainly due to the increase in the provision for bad debts, which ultimately resulted in the decrease of the accounts receivable from non-exchange. When we go to our liabilities, we ended up with liabilities of 174 million in 2020 financial year, and that was mainly due to the accounts payable from non-exchange transactions, our provisions, as well as the UIF deferred revenue. The main increase when we are comparing 2019 and 2020 financial year is due to the deferred revenue that is on the UIF liabilities. We ended up on a net asset position of 309 million, which is down from 348 million in the previous financial year. On our revenue for the 2020 financial year was in total 982 million. The majority of it comes from the skills development levies of 956 million. Our expenditure, we spent 1,021 million, and that is up from 820 million that we had spent in the previous year. This has resulted in a net deficit on the statement of financial performance of 38.6 million. The levy income of 956 million that we received in 2019-20 financial year is 8.6% increase from the previous year, and this is due to growth in the sector between the two financial years. We received interest from investments and bank balances with Investec, the CPD, as well as our transactional bank account with FNB. That was 26 million, and it is 0.3% more than the prior year actuals. So that we see a marginal growth when we are looking at that. Our mandatory grant expenditure was 175 million, which is a 4.9% increase compared to the previous year. And this is mainly due to the higher income that we have received on our skills development levies. Therefore, we had to pay higher claims on our mandatory grants. We do see our payout ratio on the mandatory grants when compared to the mandatory grants income of 75%, and this is down from 78% in the previous financial year. On our discretionary expenditure, we have paid claims of 749 million, which is 34% greater than the prior year because of the higher level of commitments that we had arising from the 2018-2019 financial year. Our administration expenditure is 96 million in 2019-20, which was 3.7% more than 2018-19. And this is mainly due to the filling in of some of the strategic positions whereby we had vacancies. As the chairperson did say, there was some vacancy in there that we had to fill in, and we still are continuing to fill the rest of them. On the overall assessment of the financial viability of the SETA, it's favorable, mainly due to our net asset liability position, which is positive. The net cash deficit, after taking into account commitments, has decreased by a very substantial amount of 2,408% compared to the prior year. The percentage of the commitments that we had at the end of the financial year when compared to the discretionary reserves was 104%. And in the prior year, it was higher, which was 195%. So we've done some tremendous work in ensuring that that is reduced. Irregular expenditure that was incurred by the SETA relating to supply chain management has also decreased drastically. We had irregular expenditure of 159,000 in the 2019-20 financial year, compared to 15 million irregular expenditure from the supply chain management that was incurred in the previous financial year. The SETA has also improved on the turnaround time of payment of suppliers. The average time that has improved from the prior year is 29 days, that was in the 2018-19 financial year, to 12 days in the 2019-20 financial year. And this is mainly due to an introduction of invoice tracking systems in both the supply chain management team and the finance team. There's other important considerations that need to be mentioned relating to the financials of the SETA. The SETA has lost 435 million in skills development levies revenue in the 2021 financial year, which is the current year that we are implementing. That started from the 1st of April. And this decrease is mainly due to the 4 months holiday, skills development levy holiday, that was announced by the president. So it actually had a very dire effect on our finances, that at the end of the day, we had to dip into our reserves in order to make sure that our operations are running. Ladies and gentlemen, that is all on the financial statements for 2019 and 20. And I will hand over back to the chairperson.
Yeah, well, I would have said you're short, but then that'll be more like I'm discriminating. So I would only say you are vertically challenged. That's a politically correct way of putting it. So I pick up, so I have to sort of try and get down to get the mic, you know. So, yeah. All right. Thank you, CFO. So I think the report that we bring back to the stakeholders in relation to the performance that we've seen over the years. So, but we will just, because we're going to go to the formal part of just adoption of certain resolutions as per the Constitution allows, wants us to do so. But I will then just allow 3 short questions on the spot, if there are any questions that may be asked. Just 3 short questions. We will say upfront that what we are unable to answer now, we will be very honest. I'm a person who says, please just hate me for the truth that I told you than loving me for the lies that I tell you, because they will catch up with me later, right? So if we are not able to answer it, we'll tell you right away. So I see one hand already. Can I recognize the second hand? And is there a second hand? Because after he's spoken, after that hand, there will be no other. There's no second round. So there's one question. Or probably virtually, is there somebody who wants to raise a question? I don't know, I can't see them. No one, all right. So there's one question. I'm an auctioneer, going once, going twice, gone, sold to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. My name is Bonsitswe Predimotope Waham CLA. Maybe let's say in short, Mr. P. I'm the chairperson of the Black IT Forum in Gauteng. I'm the executive producer of a film that has 4 IR, which will be launched by Vodacom on the 29th, and cinemas on the 11th of December, the first of its kind in Africa. Hey, I do wonders. But besides that, I'm standing here with my head of the BITF. Chair, in your business plan, I noticed that there is no funds that we are receiving from the National Skills Fund. And if I may ask, why? And that's the first question. Secondly, Chair, you know, the BITF was formed in 1998. 1998, just 1995, sorry, 1995. And some of us have been members for the past 20 years in the BITF. And we have experienced a situation where big corporates are given the first preference in terms of opportunities, or in terms of training, let's say training. And the very same corporates or multinationals or corporates that was referred to would place those learners in the very same SMMEs, yet denying the SMMEs the benefits that comes with hosting those learners, ensuring that those corporates benefit far more and far much better. What are the strategic plans of the board, of this new board? I know in 1994 we gave power to Mandela. He had no experience, and he led us with pride. And today we are giving power to the new board, who probably 90% or 95% of them have no experience. And we'll be seeing a board, we're hoping not to see a board that would want sophisticated processes for SMMEs, while they themselves, we've given them an opportunity that they've never had to lead us. Meaning, the board, we are hoping that you will lead us with pride. You are a black board, and we are hoping that the board will lead us with pride as black people. One thing, Chair, we have not even heard was COVID has created or has restructured how we work and how we do things. And we've got workers who have left their work who are unemployed today. What are the mechanisms that we've put in place as MICT SETA to ensure that the workers that are outside workplace, or the workers that are outside workplace, or yes, I apologize. Okay, the workers that are outside workplace are reskilled to be able to be integrated in the workforce. And before I close on my last two things, as the BITF would like to propose to the board that the board must form some kind of an MICT bargaining forum, where if a company is going to close shop or retrench, prior to doing that, as a levy-paying company, it should, at least MICT SETA should be able to pick up that company and be able to provide an intervention for either the employees or reskilling those employees before the company retrenches, or training or empowering those retrenched employees. I think this one, the unions should be able to say viva, to be self-employed in one way or another. And that is our proposal. And then the final one, we would like to congratulate the board on this new path that we are leading, and also the management and the team of Service SETA that has been working very hard, and we'd like to congratulate all of you. And we are saying we are here as the BITF to support. This 5 years, it's going to be sometimes we agree to disagree, sometimes we'll agree to agree, and sometimes we'll disagree. And if we disagree on many points, we'd like to make it noted in this AGM. We will meet at the Parliament. If we disagree in Parliament, we'll meet in court. So we don't want to meet. Our approach here is to work as a team, and we are saying that this sector is a creator of jobs, and many, many more SMMEs can absorb as many, many, many South Africans as we can. So, Chair, kindly lead us. Thank you.
That's fine. Thank you. Congratulations first on your invention that you spoke about, first of its kind. And congratulations, yeah. So that's a good thing. But I think, CEO, prepare yourself to respond to some of the questions. And I think board members, if there's any one of you who wants to respond on any part of this. But I warn you, I've just been given now a duty to lead. And part of leading is stopping you from talking when you're not stopping. That's part of my responsibility as I lead. So be careful when you speak. So I think the first thing, I think it's important to speak about this thing. At times I find the chasm that's between small and big business. At times I find it that probably there's something that's missing there. Because I don't understand why should we continue to be this divided as one South Africa. But having said that, the SETAs have got a responsibility particularly through their discretionary grants, right? To first and foremost address those that are at the margins of the economy, right? That's a very important thing. But I sometimes feel we have to look into our laws generally before you take us to Parliament, but then probably parliamentarians as well have got other things to sort out as well. Because if you talk about procurement as an example, some of the provisions of the procurement regulations that are there make it easy to challenge some of the decisions that are made by these entities. I'm also in the aviation space, where I lead another entity there, and I'm aware of some of the things that we struggle with in terms of transformation there because of the legal framework that's there, right? And I think there's some work that must be done in that regard. You see, Mr. P, what would happen? Litigation probably is an easy thing, and my learned friends are happy with that because they make a living out of that. But some of the things, we take them to litigation before we even exhaust the debates amongst ourselves. And we create this tension that probably is unnatural. And it's a debate that we must have. And I'm happy when you propose a particular structure. And I'm not saying we will go and do it, but I think it's something that we must debate and think about. How do we create a platform that's common for the industry to talk to the SETA? But we should do that also not forgetting what is the mandate of the SETA. Because the SETA are created for a particular mandate, right? So whatever we talk about that SETAs must do, we must also respond to a question that whether the mandate of the SETA is indeed part of what we are disagreeing about, or it's something else. Last point, before I ask somebody else to speak, is that the truth is that the demand for the skill and support is far exceeding the resources available. So when you support that entity, and then you move on to the next tomorrow, because of resources, you do not want to create a situation as if there are entities that have got a God-given right to be supported by the entity, and others are not. It's a difficult situation because when you then move on, this entity that you supported feels, I'm going to close shop now because you've taken the support that you're granting me. But there's this one that's waiting this side. I've been waiting for a long time for this support, and it's not been coming. That's the tightrope that we need to be walking. And I think it's important that the industry, because some of these things that we disagree about are because we're not talking enough to understand each other. Which is why I said part of what we want to focus on is to improve communication and responses when queries are raised. Because some of the things escalate to tension when they should not have been. So these are things that the CEO is well aware that I've emphasized on this point. It could be a simple letter that comes. If a letter comes, has got a query, why do we take forever to respond to that? Because at times, if somebody wants a response, whether it's negative or positive, but for as long as you can justify the response that you give, then to be quiet, as if I don't give you any regard. That's where the problem begins. So that said, I think it's an issue that we will look into on the issues that you have raised. Lastly, we will not be apologetic that the black SMMEs in particular are a priority. But at least somebody is clapping hands for me. It's something that goes to my CV now. So we can't apologize for that. This is in the same way the big business actually should note transformation of the industry, and every industry across the different economic sectors of the country is also in the benefit of big business. it's not necessarily about taking from big business, giving to others, but it's about sharing with everybody, right? So we've seen it in the mining industry. They set out quotas and this and that, mining charter and so on. So probably we need to be talking about those also in every industry and ask ourselves, are we meeting our targets in terms of transformation? Not just on the skills development side only, but also in other areas of the industry. We must be part of that, all of us. And SETA is not necessarily supposed to be left out of that. We must be participants in that process of transforming the industry. So your point is noted, and I think I share very well the views of this board that I'm with. With that, CEO, if there is a matter that you need to quickly clarify on the issues that are raised so that we can go to the last part of the AGM, I'm getting hungry, and food is one of my major pastimes that I have in my life.
Okay, thanks very much, Chairperson. I think I'll just address the questions that have been raised by our important stakeholder, BITF. Some questions that came from the webinar. Thanks, Chair, for your guidance and some of the answers that you've given. Pinpointed questions: why we're not getting money from NSF? We are in discussion with NSF. We approached them for a one-year deal. They said to us they would prefer that we work on a 5-year contract, 5-year funding arrangement, because the plans that they have for the PSET system, it includes MICT in a big way. I'll give you a practical example. There is fiber that's being put on the last mile on all our PSET system, the various colleges, and it needs to be maintained, it needs to be serviced. And guess what? Who's going to train those people? It's us. So they've got a much more broader mandate that they want to execute with us. There's, I think, quite a number of KPIs that they have that they want to achieve through that partnership. And there's also a lot on our plans that we want to achieve with them. You'll see when I present the business plan as well. So that's the answer for NSF. Big business hosting on SMMEs without getting the benefits, I think that could be a business issue that needs to be debated. And maybe the council, the bargaining council that you are talking about, we need to look at its terms and conditions, because if you look at the current structures that we have as a SETA, maybe there is a home for what you are looking for. If there isn't, we'll look into how we can make sure that the issues that the black SMMEs are experiencing are addressed, they're put on the table and they are addressed. So I think we're taking note of that one. There were other questions that were asked also on the live event. The first question that was asked is, how does the board intend to help SMMEs when they are using the same criteria as the banks for discretionary grants? No startup costs, no blacklisted companies. It was asked by Anonymous. We have blacklisted companies as MICT. We've blacklisted companies on National Treasury. So we don't do business with blacklisted companies. We have taken initiative to blacklist companies that don't respect our service level agreements. So it's as straight as that. The second question is, the new criteria for discretionary grants, part of the regulation is MICT SETA is the only SETA that requires this added criteria. Through the request of BITF, we've started having sessions where we unpack our discretionary grants process, the application process, the accreditation process. So we will be having more of such sessions so we can explain so people can understand how does our discretionary process works. So we'll be sending out communication around those sessions going further so we can help Anonymous as well in answering that particular question. Chairperson, I think those were the only questions that I think we needed to answer. If maybe we can then go to the next part.
Yep. Thanks, CEO. If there is a question that has not been answered adequately, the challenge, the onus is on us to create that platform where people must engage and ask questions, and we must respond. And being responsive is something that's very important. Let's go past this, and thank you for this session. And we'll quickly move to the more formal session of the AGM. Our constitution makes provisions of what we must do at the AGM. I must also just quickly acknowledge the DHEAD representative, and who is joining us virtually. And sir, you're acknowledged, and it was not that we disregarded you when we did not acknowledge you. And maybe, Mr. Zakwe, the name of the DHEAD representative must be announced here. It's Mr.
Maliviwe.
They say it's Maliviwe, but that's not your surname, sir. I'll get the surname proper, and I will acknowledge you before this meeting is over. But for now, I'll call the board secretary to read the resolution that's required to be addressed in the AGM quickly. Board secretary.
That's after. No, it's me first.
It's you first.
Yes.
Okay, come.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Chair. So what I will touch on is the priority areas that have been set by the board for us to be able to execute. Mr. P will be very happy to know that the board has rearranged our work stream, to make sure that we prioritize SMMEs as priority number one, to make sure that we bring sustainability and growth of our SMMEs, entrepreneurship and cooperatives and community-based organizations. And this is just not only just to say, you know, that this sector of the economy is not well looked after, but I think there will be programs that the SETA will be putting together to uplift them. If you want to be trained as a training provider, we'll look after you and make sure that we train you, we take you through the accreditation process, and at the end, you will receive funding for you to be able to do training. So that part is very critical for us. The second priority is ensuring good governance and within our administration function. The third one is improving labor market information for occupations in high demand. The fourth one is about developing skills interventions for rural and marginalized communities. As the chair explained earlier on, that those are the communities we also need to look into, otherwise the urbanization issue will never end. The fifth one is occupational directed programs within the priority industries. And the sixth one, obviously, is our quality of our education that is done by our educate division. The sixth one. Seventh one is enablement of fourth industrial revolution. And the last one is growing of our public college system through various partnerships. Now, so those are the set priorities upon which we'll be doing our work going forward. Now, going through the actual targets for the upcoming year, 2021-2022. Within administration, it's unqualified audit reports, maximum of 15% variance between budget and actual performance. You know, sometimes organizations, you can have very big variances of under or over performance. Maximum of 10% discretionary grants, under or over commitment. We come from an era where overcommitment was quite high, and that does give us a squeeze when we have to work on discretionary grants. We carry the load from previous periods. Trying to execute KPIs for the current year, it does become a bit difficult. Obviously, 100% elimination of corrupt and fraudulent activities, and 100% of procured goods aligned to our legislation within reasonable timeframes. And performance contracting, no exception, we have to get 100%, and we'll try and retain 70% of our people to allow for new blood to come in. As a SETA, we obviously have to make sure that we are digital as well. You know, you hear stories that we as a SETA, we are still manual. We still gather POEs and we want them printed and want signatures, etc. We have to re-engineer our business processes. We have to make sure that we get the right systems in place. We digitize our business. So we've identified those business processes, and our CIO is hard at work to make sure that we go on the right path in aligning with our training providers. Some of the training providers run world-class business processes, world-class organizations, and you inspire us. SOPs, no exception. We have to make sure that they are reviewed every year. 100% must be achieved. SETMIS reports, again, we have to maintain the green status on the league, on the performance league. So those 4 reports have got to be attended to. SLA targets met 100%. Remember, we have internal SLAs amongst ourselves as an organization, also with DHEAD. We strive to make sure we achieve 100% there. In terms of fraudulent activity, 100% elimination of such activities, and obviously good corporate governance approved by the board. Moving into sector skills planning division, for small firms, we expect a target of 1,000 WSPs to be achieved. For medium firms, 350 WSPs. For large firms, 230 WSPs. We understand that there has been problems with our system that we have just implemented. And at times, we had to go to the minister and even to our board to try and get the extensions done. But at the same time, we would like to make a plea with the training providers to just make use of the time while it's still available, because most WSPs are received at 10 to 12, at 10 to midnight. And that's when the cutoff is. And the system, as much as we stress test our systems, but sometimes the load can be too much. And it can go down. Obviously, the triangulated SSP I was speaking about, we have to achieve that, followed by a tracer impact study. It's very important to see whether the interventions that we are talking about are making an impact out there on our people. Obviously, a career guide has got to be developed and produced. We're going to be going digital. I'm working with the marketing team, the IT team, to make sure that they can be accessed and be printed, and be made available on various platforms. Hence, you see there's 3,000 up-to-date career guides that are going to be produced. In terms of events, career events, 50 targeted. Career development practitioners that are trained is steady. Capacity building workshops is 2. That's within the SSP. Moving into LPD, learning programs. TVET students requiring WIL, which is work integrated learning, it's 800. TVET students completing WIL, it's 600. University students requiring WIL, it's 350. University students completing WIL is 262. When you look at unemployed learners, enroll for internships is 700. Completing internships is 525. Enroll on skills programs is 750. Completing skills program is 562. Now, a question can be asked, why enrollment and completion is not the same? I think we take into account the realities of our sector, that sometimes you can make the wrong recruits. You can recruit learners to go and study augmented reality. And first time at class, that's the first time they hear about the word. Absorbing content becomes difficult, and they drop out. Number one. Number two, family circumstances, community circumstances that make them also drop out. So we do experience those kind of issues, and we're just making an allowance. But if we go beyond that, I think it's commendable. And then obviously completing learnerships, enroll on learnerships is 3,150, completing learnerships is 2,632. Also on unemployed, enrolled on candidacy programs, it's 60, completing them is 45. Short program enrollment, 700, completed 525. Rural development projects, 40. Workers enrolled on bursary programs as new entries is 20. On continuous basis is 15. And workers enrolled on AET or CET programs is 50. Completing is 45. Workers enrolled on RPL is 50. This is very critical. The other day, I was in the Eastern Cape at SABC. We visited SABC in the Eastern Cape, and there was a cameraman there. I think he was a senior citizen, and he was telling me stories on how people he has trained have gone to occupy management positions at SABC. Because he doesn't have the right papers, they've always went past him. And we recognize that RPL becomes very, very critical because that person has got what it takes to do the job, but obviously they're not being recognized. And I think as a SETA, we need to up these numbers. So enrollment is 50, completion is 37. Learners granted bursaries as new enrollments, 260. Grant bursaries on a continuous basis is 200. We as a SETA have taken a view that we need to have a say when we do give these bursaries for honors, for masters, for PhDs. We are interested in creating new value, so we sit down with universities, we discuss various topics that we would like to gain further insight on, because it's only when you do something like that you can come up with some sort of innovation that hopefully could be commercialized. Bursaries completed 150, TVET partnerships, HET partnerships and CET partnerships, 2022 and 9 respectively. Those are very, very, very critical. The chairs earlier on spoke about Windows 98 in year 2020. It's something that is an anomaly. And I remember last year when we visited with management, Northwest, one of the TVET colleges there that was offering courses in Windows 1998. And you ask the employers in the area, why are they not absorbing these learners? And they mention things like this, that the system is just not updated enough. But I think there is a need, colleagues, for the industry to get involved, get stuck in shaping the curriculum of these TVETs. Still on learning programs, SETA employer partnerships, 20. MICT SETA offices established. There's a great demand. I mean, as a transversal SETA, I don't say that with pride in arrogant manner, but it's true that if we train a software developer, we will see that software developer hired at a hospital, hired at police station. So in a way, the skills that we develop, it serves the entire economy, because the economy has got to be powered by some kind of digital. So we have to respond to the needs of our people all around the country. So we have 3 offices right now, but we are making strides to make sure that we appoint coordinators where we can't have offices. We open offices where there are demands. I'm very impressed and encouraged by the support we're getting from different provinces, from the premiers to the MEC of Economic Developments, in engaging with the SETA to try and make sure we've got some kind of an innovation ecosystem in various provinces around the country. Centers of specialization, I cannot overemphasize this enough. We need a platform for our learners to go play. We need a platform for our learners to go play. And I must say this, I was encouraged by some of the commitments that were made by some of the OEMs, because the OEMs have got these platforms. And there's no need for us to reinvent the wheel. Some of the OEMs have made commitments that they will be extending some of their platforms to our learners who are studying particular courses. So these centers of specialization is something that we're going to be focusing on, because one of the things that you find within the learning system is that you could be getting software training on 3GL. And then as time goes by, because you're not finding a job, you end up being passed by developments in the space. There's 4GL, there's 5GL. So by the time there's an opportunity at Standard Bank and they want 5GL skills, you come with a certificate that says 3GL. So how do we keep you sharp, fine-tuned, and relevant? And the centers of specialization can do exactly that. It's up to the learner, obviously. It's up to the learner to push the work, but at least we're giving the platform to them. TVET lecturers exposed, it's very critical. TVET managers, again, the targets are 50 all the way down to all the different lecturers that we want to work with. CET learners assessing AET programs is 100. Cooperatives supported is 100. Small business supported is 100. People trained on entrepreneurship is 100. CBOs, NGOs, and NPOs is 100. Federations, trade unions supported through relevant skills on an annual basis is 100 4IR partnerships with key role players, key role participating on 4IR committees. So as a SETA, we've established 4 streams: an education work stream, policy, research, and labor. Those are the 4 4IR committees that we have, and we are working with very important stakeholders in advancing the debates and making sure that we get industry insights to enhance our offering in responding to this 4IR. But let me just say this, 4IR for this country, right now, it's about how do we stay connected, how do we respond, and how do we make sure we're not left behind. But what's more important is how do we define the next leap? And it's very critical that our people get taught skills of innovation, skills of design thinking, because that is how we're going to define the next wave of change that we could leap on as a country and maybe sell it to other countries. So let us not be caught again with something called 5IR. We were caught once. We can't be caught again with the same thing. And we need to change the way we're responding to 4IR. Yes, we need to learn some of the technologies that we're falling behind on. I agree. But I think a lot has got to be put on how we're going to define the future. And that's why some of the qualifications we're launching is going to be talking into innovation. Next one is research chairs. With universities, we continue to fund universities on various research chairs and research topics. 4IR qualifications developed, 13, just to name a few: e-waste, robotics, cybersecurity, cloud computing, quality engineering, artificial intelligence, data science, software development, design thinking, and Internet of Things. In terms of quality assurance, number of accredited training providers, 650, registered assessors, 600, moderators, 300, and obviously the qualifications developed as well around the 4IR. That will be the end for me, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, CEO. And I think that's just about what to expect for the next year, 2021, right? 22, sorry. I've just been reminded here, the labor, we've had a discussion in the board that reskilling those who are already in the employment as well. It's part of what we would be focusing on. So I think we've not said much about it, but I think those who are already in the employ, and this is major interest, Mr. P, for the unions, Viva. See, so we should and must mention that as well. It's a very important stakeholder. That's why you've got representatives in the board that are drawn from the labor unions as well. And it's important as we see the bloodbath in the sector, SABC today, and it will be another tomorrow. So these union members are tired. That's why Mr. Klaba is not even in collar and tie. He was busy, Dolo Pezulu, at SABC at Auckland Park, trying to defend the workers there. So I think it's an important sector that we also will be focusing on. And in the next 5 minutes, between me and Dina, it's the CFO and the company secretary. Please make sure that you think about me and my stomach.
Thank you, Chair. And certainly I'm going to be very brief. So obviously after the CEO's business plan report, there's financial resources that are required in order to make sure that the business plan is done. We have estimated that for the 2021-22 financial year, in order to be able to realize the business plan that the CEO just went through, we will be requiring a skills development levies income of 938 million. And we are also expecting 8.5 million from the UIF project as the last tranche on the learnership project. We have estimated that we'll be receiving interest income from our investments in our bank accounts of 14 million, which gives us a total revenue for the 2021-22 financial year of 960 million. And as you can see, if we compare it against the approved budget, the approved budget was 601 million in 2020-2021. It is the lowest that we have ever seen the SETAs, at least in the last 5 years, due to the skills development levy. So the big jump between 2020-21 to 2021-22 is because we are expecting our operations to normalize, and we are expecting the economy to pick up from this current financial year. On the total expenditure, we are expecting to spend 919 million, in which for administration cost, which is the normal support cost, our ICT division, finance, supply chain management, we expect to utilize 123 million. Mandatory grants, we expect to pay out 187 million. And discretionary grants, we expect to pay out 508 million. In addition to what we are going to be doing in the 2021-22 financial year, and the CEO has briefly touched on it, we have set aside, or will be setting aside 100 million towards the digitization, which is IT capital cost to digitize the SETA, as well as some money for qualifications development, more specifically on the 4IR. Thank you. And just to touch on the budget by program, program 1, which is administration, there's the 123 million that's been set aside, and the 4IR qualifications and the digitization is the 100 million. And for program 2, which is sector skills planning, these are the costs for running the sector skills planning division, which includes the research costs for 1 million, and that million has been incorporated in the 123 million in program 1. In program 3, which is the learning programs, as well as 4IR research chairs and all, we are expecting to spend for discretionary related projects 470 million. And obviously with discretionary projects, there's administration costs that come with it to run the discretionary project, and those we are estimating them to be 38 million for the 2021-2022 financial year. And last but not least, our ETQA division, which is program 4. This is the costs for running the ETQA division, and it includes the QCTO cost of 0.5%, as well as our normal, apart from 4IR qualifications, our normal qualifications. We've set aside 2 million of that, and we have incorporated all those costs within the administration budget of 123 million. So that is how we expect to utilize our financial resources in the 2021-22 financial year. Thank you, Chair.
You must always remember to readjust the mic. I don't get paid for adjusting the mic. So this part has come to an end. Normally, the AGMs that I run, the AGM, I always run it within 1.5 hours, it's done. So we're not far off. We're not far off the mark, so we should be finished by now, and we've covered some time lost We are now only 25 minutes behind schedule. When we started, we were 50 minutes behind schedule. So we've covered up a little bit. And thank you for being so cooperative, audience. And we're getting to a formal part of the resolution. And the board secretary will come and and read the resolution, which we will confirm. And that will bring us to the end of the AGM. Mr. Lumka, I did not know your first name is Malviwe. The representative from DHED, Mr. Malviwe Lumka, is with us from DHED. And this session now is closed. We open part 2, and board secretary, Ayanda Mangnale. Oh, by the way, she is Ayanda Mabita Mangnale. So because there is Moses Mabita, who was a luminary in the struggle for liberation, she has changed. She does not want to use the married surname. She prefers to be a Mabita now because it's an important surname.
Good evening, members. Good evening to members of the Executive Authority, members of the Accounting Authority, members of management, stakeholders, and all attendees. As introduced, my name is Ayanda Mabita Mangnele. My role today is to pass the resolutions that are going to be considered at the annual general meeting. In terms of clause 14.1.4 of the MICT SETA Constitution, the Accounting Authority is required to consider the annual financial statements, the business plan, and the annual budget. In line with the requirements of the Constitution, we hereby formally adopt on behalf of the Board of the Accounting Authority, whereas clause 14.1.4 of the MICT SETA Constitution provides that the Accounting Authority shall adopt the annual financial statements at the annual general meeting, whereas the Accounting Authority hereby adopts the annual financial statements. Resolution 2, the adoption of the annual performance plan, whereas clause 14.1.4 of the MICT SETA Constitution provides that the Accounting Authority shall adopt the annual performance plan at its annual general meeting, whereas the Accounting Authority hereby adopts the annual performance plan. And finally, Resolution 3, whereas clause 14.1.4 of the MICT SETA Constitution provides that the Accounting Authority shall adopt the annual budget at the annual general meeting, whereas the Accounting Authority hereby adopts the annual budget. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, attendees.
I'd like to second, Chair. You know, in politics, we are taught to there's a motion and there's a seconder. So we'd like to second and the adoption.
Yeah,
as
no,
the PITF.
Yeah,
no,
thank you. The board must also confirm this. The Public Finance Management Act requires that the board also adopts these documents, and the board has considered these, and we can confirm for record in this AGM that the board has considered these and it has adopted these, and they stand adopted, and we are happy that the stakeholders are saying viva too. So we say viva to you. So when you agree with us. So these resolutions are hereby passed unanimously. As I say, the board has already considered this and has dealt with this matter, and it's concluded. With that brings us to the end of the AGM. But to close, and I will call Ms. Domikaisa Kumalo just to make one or two words of closing. Just in case you think I'm the only one who can speak in this board. There are other people, and they are women, they can speak. Some of them, I don't want to give them this platform, because if I give them, I will be fired as a board member.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ndomgaise Kumalo, as introduced earlier on. I am here just mandated that I am to do closing remarks. But before I do the closing remarks, I think it is important, Chair, through you, that we affirm ourselves as this MICT SETA board to say that we are mandated by the minister to deliver on the mandate, and we want to assure you as the stakeholders that we will endeavor to deliver on the mandate that has been entrusted on us. The board that we have in the MICT SETA, it consists of number and various type of skills, which when we look at ourselves, we can realize that we can be able to run the MICT SETA as a well-oiled machine. And therefore, with those words, would like to say thank you so much to all our stakeholders, to all our esteemed guests, to the CEO and his team, to the Accounting Authority, and most importantly, because I am a representative of the workers, who I'd like to say thank you to the general staff that usually silently help us to achieve our mandates, but usually are not necessarily recognized. Would like to say thank you. Please, there will be an announcement at the later stage in terms of what's the way forward, and would like to wish you a good evening. Thank you.
So you made yourself a favor. So I shall give you to speak next time as well. If you take this short, but then be very concise like this and deliver a powerful message like that. So I was worried you're going to take long, so you help everybody. Thank you so much for that. And please, I understand that dinner is going to be served. If you can tell us how we go about that, and so we then close.
Thank you, Chair. Members, dinner will be served just outside. You are welcome to sit where you are, but the serving stations are outside, and drinks you can order from the waiters that are available, and it's strictly a cash bar. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. We sign off. Thank you so much for stakeholders, and we hope that you will continue to work with us going forward. And I think this session now stands adjourned. Thank you.